Hello, everybody, and welcome to How to Get Hired. I am Bill, the company's expert. Here we go. Got to press the right button. 1 second in, and I pressed the wrong button. We're on a roll. Welcome to my weekly live stream where we talk about careers, jobs, job interviews, recruiters, job applications, networking, public speaking, anything connected with how to get hired. Basically. So this is primarily a Q&A. So if you are seeing my beautiful face right now, you should see a chat box somewhere in the vicinity of my face. And get in the chat, type in your question. What are you wondering? What are you struggling with? What are the challenges you're facing right now? And we can talk about it. I will try to help you out if I can. And it says 0 people here. So that always makes me nervous that I haven't set a setting properly. Oh, there we go. Okay, 11. Good. Well, welcome to this weekly live stream. And just a public service announcement before we begin. I will be doing a second episode of the leadership live stream that I did. I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago. No, I did it last week. There will be a second episode of that next week. Because a couple of people have asked for it. And quite frankly, I really enjoy talking about that stuff. And I'd like to do it more often. So I'm going to try and push to do that as a regular thing. If there are anybody out there that, any people that want to show up to hear me talk about it. But if you're wondering, that is something I did. It was an experiment. I did it. It was a one-time only thing. And it was, if you have any ambition of becoming a higher level manager or an executive manager, we talk about some of the issues that come up, some of the skills required, some of the strategies used, some of the tips and tricks for how to do that job, what's required of that job. So if you do have any ambitions of like learning that stuff or possibly climbing the corporate ladder or anything like that, we're going to talk about that. I'm going to share some of my experiences and knowledge in that area. I don't know everything, but I know quite a bit, and I rarely get a chance to talk about it sort of in a public kind of forum. So we are going to do that. But today we're here to talk about anything that you guys are struggling with how to get a job, how to get hired. That's what the name of this is. And I see Vivian is here. Vivian is here. Thank you for joining me again. Once again, I really don't have an agenda of what to talk about, so you guys are going to have to give me some questions, and I will be happy to answer them. In the meantime, while we're waiting for questions, I want to mention once again that I have a course called my Get Hired course. So that's where I put all my recommendations from beginning to end in one place that you can go through in order. With templates and procedures and all this kind of stuff. It's all laid out. And it covers 2 big areas of how to get hired, which is applying for posted jobs, okay, dealing with recruiters, dealing with job interviews, that kind of stuff. It also talks about networking, how you would do networking. And it's especially tailored to introverts, people that, you're not a very extroverted type person. You're not a social butterfly. You don't know a million people. It's how to reach out to hiring managers in your region, in your industry, and present yourself and make a case for yourself, and put yourself forward for a lot of jobs, because it's the single most effective way of getting a job. And you don't have to take my word for that. You could do your own independent research. This is what you'll find. Most people get a job not through contacting recruiters and applying for posted jobs, but they get their job through some form of networking. That's by far the most popular way of getting hired. But we are here to talk about all kinds of methods, whatever you guys want. So get in the chat and let me know. I have a beam of light coming in from my window that's reflecting off my face here. And I had an orange Post-it note that it was falling on like this, and it was making my whole face look orange. So I finally figured out what was causing that, and it was the sun reflecting off a Post-it note. Let's see, who we got? We got Eugene. Eugene is here. Says, hiring manager recommended me to apply for another job, and the recruiter emailed me just a few minutes after the interview. Is that a good sign? The hiring manager also follow up with me. Look, it could be a good sign or it might not be a good sign. There's no way to tell, okay? It depends on how competent these people are, how they do things, what their values are. It doesn't matter. If they get back to you and they want to continue the process, that's great. Or they get back to you and they have a written offer. That's great, okay? In the meantime, don't obsess over looking backwards, running it over in your mind, worrying, how am I doing? How am I doing? Are they going to call me back? Are they going to call me? That's unproductive. It can lead to mental health issues, and it doesn't accomplish anything. Instead, be looking forward, okay? If these people call you back, great, okay? But in the meantime, look forward. Think of new opportunities. Apply for more positions. Use different methods of getting jobs, okay? And then, creating new opportunities for yourself, okay? Looking forward. Try to get more interviews. Try to put out more applications. Try to contact more hiring managers. Whatever method you're using, any and all methods. Be moving forward. Don't be sitting there doing nothing, looking back. Does that make sense? Okay? There is no way of knowing. And if you're playing the game of like analyzing what people have done, if this is a good sign, if it's a bad sign, that's absolutely unproductive, unfortunately. I know it's easier said than done. We are all human. We can't help but replay it over in our mind and obsess about it. I get that, especially if it's a really good job or you really need a job, like, as soon as possible. It's normal behavior, but just understand that in itself is not really productive. It's better for your mental health, and it's better for the practicalities of this to get hired, to focus your energies on trying to create new opportunities, get more interviews, apply for more things. That's the only way to do it. Okay. I've heard stories of like hiring managers and recruiters like contacting people like after the fact when it's just there's nothing happening, either because they're completely incompetent, don't know what they're doing, or they're just, it's like they're engaging in pointless things that give people false hope. I've seen all kinds. It also could be a good sign of the more they're wanting to deal with you after the fact. That could be signs that there's some potential. There's no way of knowing. Okay. It could go both ways. Carol says, "Hey, Bill, you're looking great." Well, thank you. Yes, I'm sure I am. Could you cover high points on best way to combat ageism in hiring? I'm 60 and have my PMP since leaving my corporate stressful manager of people role. Okay, so could you cover the best way to combat ageism in hiring? Look, it's kind of a sign of the times. Like for the last, I don't know how many years, people have been really obsessing about lots of isms, and ageism is one of them. Everybody has their own thought processes of how they decide someone's value over somebody else. That's what this process is, especially if you're applying to a posted job. Okay, they're getting all the applications and they're making a series of decisions that sort of refine that pool of talent, like at the top, maybe 1,000 applications down to one. Okay. And every decision is based on people's assumptions, people's values. So this is just how it goes. They have to make decisions. And a lot of times those decisions, we know this. This is not coming from me. This is coming from people that have PhDs in management science that study these things. We know that this process is totally flawed. Job interviews are very, very poor deciders of who is most suitable for a position, right? It's based on superficialities. It's based on biases. It's based on assumptions. It's just a very, very imperfect process. We know this. This is well known and well documented and well studied. The reason why we still, as a society, do this is because the alternatives are much, much more labor intensive, and they just don't want to commit to that kind of investment of time and energy for lower level positions. So they're fine with this totally imperfect process, okay? But ageism is one of them. Now listen, if you want people, let's say you're 60 and you want people to see value in a 60-year-old, at the end of the day, if the person making the decision is themselves 60 years old, they're probably not going to hold the fact that you're 60 against you, all things being equal, okay? If they're 21 years old and you're 60, they're probably not going to see the fact that you're 60 as a strength. They're going to see it more of a weakness. But like a 60-year-old or a 70-year-old is going to see it as a strength, right? It's like, finally, somebody that has a lot of experience, somebody that's seen a few things and knows how to handle situations. They're going to look at all the positives, right? So if you're trying to get a job in an environment where there's a lot of 21-year-olds, you're going to be swimming uphill on this. If you're trying to get a job in an environment where there's a lot of 60 and 70-year-olds, you're probably going to have an easier time, okay? Now, you said you're into, you're a manager of people, right? Well, the beautiful thing about like management type roles in general is that age is usually a good thing. Like usually, all things being equal across the board, age is regarded as a positive. It means experience. It means, a lot of practice. You've had a lot of practice doing things and you've seen a lot of stuff, right? When you're a worker, age can be regarded as a negative because, you're older, you're slower, you complain more, you have more physical ailments to doing manual work, et cetera, et cetera. But in the world of like management, decision-making and thinking and communicating, generally it's regarded as a good thing. So I wouldn't, far be it for me to say I wouldn't worry about it, but I would apply where people are older, like where the people that are going to be interviewing you are older. The hiring managers are older. I don't know, maybe in banks and stuff. I don't see a lot of 21-year-olds leading divisions of banks, for example, or large organizations. If those are the type of people that are going to be interviewing you, I don't think they're going to mind too much that you're 60. And if they have any obvious concerns, you could probably just alleviate those by directly addressing them. Maybe one of the obvious concerns would be, well, how much energy do you have? And how open are you to learning new things? Because if you're 60, you might just be cruising towards retirement and therefore you don't care about committing long-term to anything and stuff like this. So if you can find ways of addressing those up front and talk to an older person, I don't think ageism is going to be too much of a roadblock unless there's like other details here. So hopefully that makes sense, Carol. Let me know if there's more to the story. You're welcome, Eugene. Hopefully that works. Zakaria, I recognize that name. Hello, it's always great to see your notification popping up. I would like to know, how could we find that fine line between selling your competencies and lying in a job? Okay, well, look, it's not a fine line, okay? It's actually pretty damn clear. A lie is a lie, okay? If you say you've done something when you haven't, that's a lie. If you say that, you have a certain educational qualification when you don't, that's a lie, okay? Selling, is, and marketing and doing a good pitch is focusing on your positives, like amplifying and accentuating all your good points and downplaying or not mentioning any of your bad points, okay? Like that's what selling is, okay? It's not the same thing as lying, okay? Lying is when you're saying something is true when it's not, okay? So it's not really a fine line, Zakaria. Okay. What you need to do is you need to like if you think about it, I'm assuming you're talking about this in relation to yourself. You're selling yourself. You're wanting to make yourself out to be the best candidate for a job. Okay. If you think about it, you could probably think of a lot of great things about you, reasons why people would hire you. Starting with the fact that you have certain experiences and skills and educational qualifications, and going into more abstract things like, you have the ability to do this or the capability of doing that, and you have passion for this and blah, blah. So you could also back that up with a lot of success stories that you've played out over the previous years. Here's your shining moments. This is what you had to do. This is what you did. This is how it turned out. That says a lot about you. So selling yourself would be like making sure that people understand those things about you. Okay. Making sure that they get the picture. Okay. That was communicated clearly to them. Okay. Now, if you do have any negatives, and everybody's got negatives, okay, maybe you failed at something, maybe you you only have this little bit of experience dealing with this, or you don't have any practical experience in this area that they may need, okay? It's then preparing some kind of spin to it. You don't lie and you say you have experience when you don't, but you say, look, I have learned all about that, like assuming this is true. I have learned all about that in school. So I'm not really worried if that were to come up, because I know how you're supposed to handle it, and I would handle it this way. You could also say something like, I've worked next to people that have had a lot of practical experience in that area, and I've picked up a lot of tips from them as to how you handle it. You know, and I know, for example, that if this happens, you do this, and that happens, you do that. I don't have any concerns that I would be unable to handle that. You know, things like this. So you're not lying about anything. You're just sort of accentuating the positives and downplaying any negatives. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. Georgie or Georgi, I have a job interview with the hiring manager tomorrow. The recruiter called me beforehand to ask, what's my salary requirement? I gave him a number, which I knew will guarantee me an interview. But in reality, if I get an offer, I wouldn't accept such a low wage. How to negotiate effectively? Thank you. Well, it's kind of hard to negotiate after you've already given them a number. That's the problem. I think the most popular video on my YouTube channel addresses this. Okay, like when they say, what are your salary expectations? It's got millions of views. Like what the conventional wisdom is, you try not to give a number, because you know what they're doing here. They're not asking this question so that they can have a serious conversation with you about what your pay should be and how they can accommodate you. And, you know, all that's not what this question is for. This question is to weed you out. If you ask for more than this amount, sorry, no dice. We move on to the next candidate and we eliminate you. You ask for too much money, right? Okay, that's why they ask this question. So the problem is, if you've already given them a number, okay, they're going to want to, you know, hold you to it, right? So you've just told them, like, I would do the job for this amount of money, right? So it's kind of hard to go back and say, oh, when I said that, I was lying and I'm really going to need this much money. It's kind of hard to do that. Now, what you can do is you could say, like, look, when you asked me that, you know, I was not aware of a lot of the details of this position. Okay. I didn't know what, you know, your policy is on mandatory overtime. I didn't know what exactly I'd be doing all day. I didn't know what the conditions would be. I didn't know how much vacation would be involved. I didn't know what my benefits would be. Like blah, blah, blah. I didn't know any of that. So, you know, that's kind of generally what I would need, assuming all the other things were really good. But now, as I've found out that, you know, these other things are kind of not what I was expecting them to be, I'm going to have to revise that number. You know, now that I know this and this and this and this, the number is going to have to be this, right? And whatever you say to them, you know, if you are bluffing, you're going to have to expect that your bluff will be called. Okay. So let's say you'd be satisfied with 50, but you want to try and get more than that. So you say, well, I need 70, right? You have to expect them to call you on that and say, well, sorry, we don't pay 70, so no dice, right? Okay, so there's a lot to this. This is a huge area, but that's the absolute basics, okay, is never give a number, and you've already kind of passed that point, so it kind of ties your hands a little bit. What I'd recommend, Georgie or Georgi, is I've got a video on that. Go watch the video And then I've got another video called Salary Negotiation. That's an hour long, and it goes into all the facets of this and how it all works and how it all plays out, and what you can do to sort of play that game and win. So I would check out those. And then I wish you all the luck in the world with this position. But certainly for next time, you will know how to handle this from the very beginning. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Renee says, what stands out, I didn't skip anybody, I know. What stands out in a resume for a recruiter to give you an interview? I'm having issues getting interviews. I'm looking for an entry-level email developer position. Okay, here's the deal. Recruiters, a recruiter is somebody who their job is to go out and find candidates that have certain requirements. Okay, that's their job. So, like, for example, when I was a manager, I've hired recruiting companies, and you basically say, like, okay, I'm posting a position, and I'm looking for candidates that have this, and this. Okay, these 5 things. Okay, so I then go to a recruiting company. I say, okay, what's your rate? What's your fee? I would like you to go out and find me 10 candidates that meet all 5 of these requirements. Okay, go. That's your job. And then when you found those 10 candidates, I want to be in the job interview. We will have job interviews. You coordinate all the interviews. We'll have it here, and you're going to be in the interview with me. And I'd like to get your thoughts, your recommendations on which candidate. You can conduct most of the interview. I maybe ask a couple questions, and then that's it. And then, this sort of thing. So they're paid to find candidates that meet certain requirements. That's what the purpose of their position is. So recruiters care about those requirements. Now, what are those requirements? Well, some of them are posted in the job posting. There'll be a section where it says, like, this is the role, this is the title, this is the little bit about the company, and this is a little bit about the role, and then these are the requirements. We're looking for people that have this, and this. Okay? So above all, they're looking for those. Okay? So when you send in your resume or your application, a recruiter is primarily looking at those to decide who they're going to bring in for an interview. Okay? That's kind of the most important thing generally for recruiters. Once you get to the interview, all the people that have been called for job interviews, all the candidates that are now doing an interview, usually the way it works is that they all kind of have the requirements, or else you wouldn't be talking to them, right? So the way you get the interview is with the requirements. The way you pass the interview is by going beyond the requirements. That's where they look at your personality. That's where they look at how much they like you. That's where they look at, like, how professional you are, how good of a communicator you are, things like this. Like, it's beyond the requirements. So in a nutshell, that's kind of how this works. So if you're not getting interviews, the problem could be that when the recruiter gets your resume, the fact that you meet the requirements is not particularly prominent. It doesn't stand out. And the general rule is that for a lot of jobs, unfortunately, you have to kind of rewrite your resume to a small degree to tailor it for what they happen to be looking for that position. You have to use the same lingo that they're using. And if they've said that these 5 things are, like, really what's important, you should put those 5 things towards the beginning of your resume kind of prominently so it jumps out, right? Now, maybe you're already doing that. There could be other reasons too. Another common reason is that, 1,000 people have applied for this job, and what they did is they looked at the resumes in order that they received them. So they looked at the first 200, and then within the first 200, they easily found 10 that they, people that met the requirements pretty clearly. And so they just, decide, okay, these are the 10 we're going to interview. And then they stopped going through resumes at that point, right? It was like a first come, first serve kind of thing. So you could have all the requirements and you could have it prominently, but maybe you were applicant number 762 and they didn't look that far in the list. Okay, so that's also a very common reason too. Okay, so that's what I'll say about that. And just to react to the last sentence you wrote there, I'm looking for an entry-level email developer. There are a lot of other ways of getting a job besides applying for posted positions. Posted positions are actually one of the worst ways of getting a job. It's the toughest because it's the default thing for a lot of people. So I would investigate networking. I would investigate a lot more promising ways of getting a job than just applying for posted positions. Okay. If you're not aware of it, there are other methods that are much more promising, and they actually lead to better positions, better roles than what's posted. Okay, so just if you're not aware of that, investigate that world. It'll be to your advantage to do it. You will get hired quicker and you will find a better role, all things being equal, than just applying for posted positions. Georgie or Georgi, your story went on. I see that now. Okay, so this was the whole you gave a number, you gave a salary expectation number, and you said, but in reality, if I get an offer, I wouldn't accept such a low wage. How to negotiate? Okay, I don't think I addressed that when I responded to you. Yeah, like that's a bluff. You're bluffing. You're saying I need this, but that's actually not true. You would accept something lower. So this is the problem with giving a number. That illustrates why giving a number is a no-win situation. Because let's say the position pays between 50 and 100, like just as an example. Okay, that's kind of a big range, but you know what I mean? And you said, okay, you would accept 50. Okay, like in reality, you would accept 50. But you said 90. Okay? The problem is if you say 90, the odds are is that other applicants are willing to do it for a lot less. So they will rather go with those applicants than keep pursuing you, right? On the other hand, if like the problem is they're going to hold you to that right now. If you try and lowball yourself and you say, okay, I will do it for 50, and then you say 50, it's kind of hard for you to get the job and have them pay you much more than 50, right? So you could have made like up to 100, but you've now priced yourself at 50. So that's kind of sort of in the ballpark of what they're going to pay you, right? So that's the problem. You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, right? That's why they ask this. And they'll feed you all kinds of bullshit in why they can't give you a range and why they have to get a number from you. Like, it's so childish and stupid. They'll say, I don't know the range for this position. I mean, I'm only recruiting for it, but I don't know the range, right? It's like, yeah, that is so insulting to people's intelligence. It's almost as insulting as when they say, the job is now on hold, right? Which is a euphemism for, sorry, we didn't select you. It's a no. But they play these kind of games, and it's sort of reality 101 for people. For some people, this is all the reality they get in their lives when they see what's actually going on, is when they go to a job interview and they're confronted with the reality. The reality is that you're competing against other people for a job. And one of the ways, the main criteria is, or the criterion they're going to use is going to say, how much shall we pay? And they're going to try and play one candidate off another, right? Now, the knee-jerk reaction a lot of people have to this is they say, that's immoral, unethical, that's stupid, it's self-defeating. No, it isn't. It's exactly the way we all behave when we go to the store. You want to buy a product from the supermarket, you want to buy milk. And there's milk by different brands. That one is $2, that one's $5, that one's $10, and that one's $50. Well, you're going to eliminate the $50 and the $10 one, and you're going to look at the $2 and the $5 one, right? I mean, that's how we all behave. Companies are no different. They don't want to shell out extra money for no reason. If they can get someone that will do a half-decent job that will fill this role, but will do it for 50% of the salary that somebody else wants, they're going to hire the cheaper person. That's just how it goes. And unfortunately, a lot of the worker level jobs, companies never admit this, but they have this belief that a person is a person is a person. One person is as good as the next. So, they don't really believe in this idea that, oh, that person is worth double what this person is if they're both going to be in the same role. Regardless of what the reality is, that's what companies actually believe. And their behavior is based on that, right? So this is the game that we're playing. Okay, where did I leave off here? This thing keeps jumping on me here. Okay, I did Renee, I did Georgi. Renee says, my portfolio is solid and I just had my resume professionally updated. I'm applying to 30 jobs a day. Okay. Yeah, the problem is that you have to tailor your resume for a lot of things. You really do. Now look, regardless of what my opinion is, let's look at the results. If you've had your resume professionally updated, and I'm inferring from that you are not further tailoring it to each position you use it to apply for, what are the results? Are you getting a lot of callbacks for doing that? If I had to guess, all things being equal, I would say that's probably not going to result in a lot of callbacks for posted positions. What you need to do, unfortunately, is you have to tailor your resume. You have to tweak it because they're going to be looking for certain things featured prominently. And those are going to be different for every job you apply for, right? The requirements are slightly different for everything you apply for. So to really fit your resume like a glove to what they're looking for so that they call you in for an interview, you're probably going to have to tailor your resume. I know people don't want to hear that because it's very labor intensive, but that's kind of what gets you interviews is like, your resume fitting like a glove to exactly what they're looking for. Right? Now, it might be impractical to apply for 30 jobs a day and tailor your resume for each one. So you could come up with some kind of hybrid thing where you apply for 20 jobs a day just with your resume. But for 5 or so that are like really promising, really like these would be awesome jobs for you, maybe you should take the extra trouble to tailor your resume to those. You could try that, but experiment. Okay. Like I'm giving you what generally works. There are going to be factors that depend on you and who you are and what your resume says and what jobs you're going for and what industry you're in and all that kind of stuff. So try it. Try both and see which is more successful. Do like an A/B test. And don't just close your mind to like, my resume is what I paid for and I'm not going to touch it. For any job that I apply for, I wouldn't fall into that. I'd have a version that you can edit and customize it and then send that out occasionally. That would be my recommendation. Thank you, Carol. That's very nice of you to say. Mr. Friendly says, hi, I really enjoy your channel and it has helped me so much. That's great. I recently took a new role in my field at another company. I am extremely happy with the change. The company and people are great. Well, that's awesome, Mr. Friendly. That must result in you being Mr. Friendly. It's great to see you prospering. Thanks again for all your help. You're absolutely welcome. And I can't really take credit. You kicked ass, and no one can take that away from you. Super realistic editor. No, it says super relatic. Sorry, I'm probably mispronouncing a common word. Cybersecurity entry-level job needs years of experience. How to tackle that? Well, I would tackle it the way you tackle any entry-level job that claims they need experience, which means that they're idiots. It's either not an entry-level job, hence the definition of entry-level, or it doesn't actually need years of experience, and they're lying about that. So you can pick one, Now, how to go about doing it is I wouldn't play their idiotic game, okay? Because already, by the fact that they're doing this, that signals that something is not right. Either they are lying to you or they don't know what they're doing. Take your pick, right? They're either extremely incompetent or they're malicious. So, take your pick. I would sidestep the entire thing by not talking to these people at all. I wouldn't talk to recruiters for posted jobs, especially if they're kind of pulling this kind of thing. is I would do what I recommend everybody does. Certainly later on in your career, I would just do it a little earlier. I would go directly to the hiring managers. I'd reach out proactively to them. I'd talk to them, not their recruiters that they've hired or used from their own HR department. I would talk directly to the hiring manager. I mean, you can, like, let me put it to you this way. Who do you think a manager would rather hire? Would they rather hire somebody that's got 10 years experience, but is arrogant and uninterested in the job? Or would they rather hire somebody who's coming out of school? They don't have any real experience on the job, but they have energy, they have passion, and they're great to deal with. Which one do you think a lot of hiring managers would pick? If you answered the younger person who's passionate, who really wants to do the job, they would regard it as a dream come true to get that job, and they're passionate about it. They've got a lot of energy. They're a quick learner. A lot of people would choose them. Not for every position, but for a hell of a lot of positions, they would choose that person. Okay? So wouldn't it be awesome if the hiring manager could see you and see the fact that, okay, yeah, you might not have any real work experience, but you're awesome to deal with. You're passionate about doing this kind of work. You've got a lot of energy. You've got great communication skills. They like dealing with you. Wouldn't it be great if they could see that, right? Instead of just looking at a resume, a faceless resume that has a name on it that shows school but no experience. So wouldn't it be great? Well, there is a way for you to do that. It's for you to proactively reach out to hiring managers. I talk about that in my course. I talk about that on my YouTube channel and some YouTube videos. I've done live streams on that. You can do this. This is one of the most popular ways of getting a job. Okay, is you reach out and say, hey, I'm here. I've got, a lot of passion for doing this kind of work. I've got this qualification that qualifies me for doing it. I know that your company is doing work in that area. I know that you guys do this. I think that's great. If ever you're looking for, a junior member, of your department or whatever, I'd love to be able to help you with that. So let me know if ever you're looking. Thank you. How many people do you think do that? Well, it's maybe rising to zero, Not a lot of people do. How many of those do you think the hiring manager gets? Do they get 10 of those a day? No, they don't. So when they get one, it makes an impression. Now you contrast that with how many resumes are sent in response to a posted job. Hundreds, sometimes even more than 1,000. You're 1 in 1,000 applying for a job, right? They don't see who you are. They just see a resume. And so a lot of times they don't even see your resume. It's either handled by applicant tracking software or it's not handled at all. If you reach out, that signals several things. You're not going to reach out to places you have no interest in working, right? So the fact that you reached out to somebody, that must signal that, you're actually interested in working here and doing that job. How many people do this? Not many. It's not a majority of people that do it. So you must have above average initiative and communication skills, interpersonal skills to do this. Especially if you wrote them a note that was favorable, it didn't say something stupid and you didn't misspell every second word, you wrote a professional message that made a lot of sense and made a good first impression. That signals so many things just in that little tiny note. That signals you got great communication skills. You're professional. You understand protocol. You understand how to present yourself. You understand how to communicate something. You understand how to persuade somebody. These are all incredibly talented, incredibly valuable skills that talented people have. So that will break a deadlock if you can't get anywhere going through standard channels applying for jobs. Okay, so there's a lot to this. I can't sort of explain it all in a couple of minutes, but investigate that side of things. That's a very, very powerful method of getting a job. It's very promising. Usually a lot of people use methods like that later on in their careers after they're beyond the entry-level job stage. Okay, so check that out too. I've got free videos on that, and I've got a course that takes you through the whole thing right there. You can check that out if that works for you. But regardless of like how you learn it, like step into that world. Okay. That will open up so many doors. Just the activity of doing that. Coincidentally, it's also kind of, it's picking up on a lot of the skills and methods that people use to make sales. In this case, you're selling yourself, right? Like a lot of these methods, if you are an outside salesperson for a larger organization, you're going to be doing this kind of thing, right? So very useful and very effective. Where did I leave off here? Oh, that was, okay, so that was Super Reladic Editor. Huda says, hello, sir. I was working at a school last year. I did great things and got the job. Majority of them admired my job. I have many good ideas on my mind this year. They didn't hire me. I get disappointed. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Huda. Yeah, there's more to, in order to get a job, you have to do more than just be qualified for the job. You also have to sell yourself. Like that's a totally separate skill. There's a lot of people that are at various different stages of their career that are just finding this out. There are a lot of people that they get their first couple of jobs very easily. They say, hey, I'm here. Here's my resume. And they go, okay, you're hired, basically. Come in for an interview. They ask you a couple of questions. Okay, you're hired. And the person thinks, wow, that's easy. And then you falsely conclude that, oh, they hired me because I'm so good on paper and I'm so good in person. And it's like, nope, that's a false conclusion. Maybe the reality was that, what was going on was they just needed a lot of people fast and you seemed qualified, so they just hired you. But maybe they were in the middle of an economic boom or something. Later on, the boom subsides and now it's a little bit more difficult. It's more normal in how you get a job. You got to do more than just say I'm qualified. Some people that have skills that not many other people have, that are in an area that's in high demand, they falsely conclude that, oh, I just got to show up and tell them that I have these skills, and then bam, they hire me. I get comments like that on a regular basis on my YouTube channel. People saying, you don't need to know any of this stuff. Just say you're qualified and then they'll hire you. That's all I've ever done, and I always get hired. It's like, yeah, and you're kind of arrogant about it. For most people, that doesn't work, as I'm sure a lot of you guys know. There's a little bit more to it than that. You have to actually sell yourself. I mean, all the more power to you for being in that, that highly desirable situation. But for most people, it doesn't work like that. I know a lot of people in IT, they kind of have that. I've got a lot of comments from people in IT. People that, generally speaking, have poor social skills to begin with. And then, they have this arrogant attitude like, oh, I'm trained in this. So I just go in there and I say I'm trained in this, and then they give me the job. What's the problem? It's like, yeah, well, that's great for you, but for most people, it's not as simple as that. And then every few years, the IT industry goes into a bust cycle, right? Where they lay everybody off, and then these people have no idea what to do with themselves. So yeah, like selling yourself is a skill, being able to persuade people. It's part of interpersonal skills and a part of communication skills. So yeah. Anyway, like tacking on some basic communication skills and presentation skills and being able to sell yourself is a very, very useful thing to know how to do. And I know because I'm primarily a technical introvert. This side of things does not come naturally to me. I've had to tack that on over the course of my career out of necessity. And a lot of people have done that too, and they've won because of it. Anyway, I'm just sort of filling air. There's not a lot of questions coming. This thing has stopped moving. But yeah. You guys like my cup? It makes up for my gray world here I'm living in with a cup like this. And you got to fill it up with gasoline and nitrous too, just to make up for it. So yeah, we got 29 people here. So get in the chat and let me know what you're struggling with or what you're trying to do and what you're puzzled about, and I will try to help you. I know I can be critical of certain things every once in a while, but it's not personal. It's just there's a lot of BS in this world of like hiring. A lot of recruiters, like pretty much, like I'm not beating up on recruiters. There are some really good ones out there, but there's a lot of people out there that are working as recruiters that, they just don't have a lot of integrity. Put it that way. Serious Cat is here. Serious Cat says, "Hi, Bill. Getting great advice from your channel." Well, thank you. I often get the question, give an example of a time you had a disagreement or conflict with a coworker, and how did you handle it? What are they after? Well, they're after seeing if you see, they're asking these questions not because they care about anything you've done in your past. They want to know that if this will come up, if they give you this job and this situation comes up, they want to know if you can handle it properly, right? Okay, so first of all, when they ask you these behavioral type questions, make sure you respond with a story that if this happened again, this is what you would do. Don't tell them a story that like, technically I did do this 10 years ago when it came up, but I have learned since then that's not the best way to do it, right? I have matured and I have learned a better way of doing it since then. No, tell them what you would do. Make sure you're telling them what you would do again if it happened tomorrow. Okay. Now, what they're looking for is in this, like to venture a guess. Okay. What they're looking for to this specific question, handling a disagreement or a conflict with a coworker. Okay. The answer to a lot of these type of situations, whenever there's a conflict, think communication as the solution. Okay. So for example, let's say you had a conflict with a coworker. They took exception to the way you were doing your job. They got very upset. They reported you to the boss, and then the boss had a problem with you, and you had to sort of smooth it over. So that was a conflict. How did you handle it? Well, I went and I spoke to the coworker. I said, I understand that, unfortunately, it seems that, the work I've been doing is not to your liking. And, if you could share with me, I'm genuinely interested. Like, what is it that I'm doing that you would have me do differently? And if you could help me understand where you're coming from, what do you recommend I do? If it's a change that I can make, I have no objection to making that change if it would work for me and it would work for you. I mean, let's work together here, and you would do this, by going to them in private and having a one-on-one. Don't do this in public. Don't do it when they're stressed out, or they're upset. Like go when they're calm, go when, they have a moment and, you can talk to them privately and then get their side of the story and say, okay, like really listen to what they're saying. Like, oh, okay, I was not aware of those effects that the work I was doing was having on other people. That's part of the process that they haven't sort of shared with me. I wasn't aware of that. Now that I'm aware that what I'm doing here is affecting other people in these ways, that's no problem. I'm happy to make that change. Does that work for you? And they said, yes. And then I made the change and then they were happy and they came up and they, thanked me for doing it. And they told me that, yes, everyone is having a good time now. Your work is not causing any issues, right? So whenever there's a conflict, usually the solution is going to be some type of communication. Okay. So, if you say something like that, what they're going to conclude, hopefully, is that if this type of situation comes up again, you will be able to handle that conflict in a professional manner that works for the company and works for other employees, and you're not going to go nuts and quit or something. So they'll probably be happy with that answer. MA says, hello, Bill. Please, how does one answer this interview question? What has prompted you to consider leaving your current role and applying for this role? Well, that's a standard question. That's a standard job interview question. Why did you leave your last role, right? I've done a video on that because there's many responses and there's a bit of a decision tree as to how it works. Bottom line is the very short answer is to say, I'm ready to do more. Don't find fault with your previous job or your previous boss or anything. That's pretty much a fail. If you rat somebody out or throw them under the bus, don't do that. The best way to do it is just to say, I'm ready to do more, right? And then you elaborate. I find this work particularly interesting. I find that, those guys are fine, but you guys have a much bigger operation. I'm interested in doing this on a bigger scale. I think there's more opportunities here, and I'd like to expand in my abilities to work in on a greater scale. Something like that. That's what they're looking for. Okay. MA continues. Hello, Bill. How does one answer this question? What is it about the role that you find attractive? Well, that's another form of why should we hire you? Okay. And I have a video on that. The answer is, in a nutshell, the short version is you focus on the requirements. You say, they say, what is it about this job that, you made you apply for it? Why do you want to work here? Why this specifically? And then the answer is, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you're looking for someone who, and then you go down their requirements, who has this. Well, that fits me like a glove. I have that, right? So it seems like I'm a perfect fit for what you're looking for. I'd be able to bring all of my skills and experience to bear in this job, and that's what I'm interested in. I could bring more to this role than almost any other role I've ever seen. So that's why I'm here, and that's why I've applied for this. Something like that. Lord Raymond says, hello, Bill. I recently wrote a list of companies I want to apply to. Should I try to connect with them before or after I send my application to my entry-level IT? Well, learn how to network, okay? Learn how to network, and the answer will be obvious, okay? What you need to do is you see, it isn't both. It's one or the other, okay? Either you send an application in and you go through their official channels, which means that your first thing is you respond with an application. You send in your resume and job application, and that goes through a standard channel, either a web portal or it gets sent to a recruiter. And then you're dealing with the recruiter if it gets to the next step, okay? Okay. The other thing you're talking about is reaching out to the organization, to the company or the business unit, whatever. Okay. And usually you're not going to talk to a recruiter. It's a waste of time to talk to a recruiter. You should talk to a hiring manager. That means the manager, the boss, the person that has decided they need to hire someone for their department. And if you get hired, that person will be your boss. Okay. That's the hiring manager. You reach out to them. You don't do both. Okay, you do one or the other, and the circumstances under which to reach out to a hiring manager are when they haven't posted a job. Because if they posted a job, they've told you this is how we want you to respond to it. You send in your application, you talk to this recruiter, right? If they've told you this, but you've deliberately ignored that and contacted somebody else, what does that say about you? That says, well, you're somebody who can't follow instructions, or you won't follow instructions, right? And it just makes a bad first impression. They've already gone to all the trouble to set up this official process, and you've ignored it, right? So the way to reach out to hiring managers is you don't wait until they posted a job. Okay, you know that they're in your industry, that they do work that they would hire someone like you with your skills. You could work there. So before they post anything, you reach out to them and say, hey, if ever you're looking for someone who can do this kind of work, who's qualified in this, that solves this problem, right? Look no further. I'm right here. I would love to work for your company. Whoops. As I smack my mic. I would love to work for your company. You guys do some very exciting work in this area, and I'd love to work for you. If ever you're looking, please let me know. Thanks and have a great day. That's the simplest form of networking, okay? You don't have to leave your house or your apartment, whatever. You could do this from your computer right now. And that really makes sense if they haven't posted anything, right? Because then you're not ignoring anything they've already told people to do, right? And there's absolutely no harm in it. It's not inappropriate on any level Somebody saying, I think what you do is awesome. I'd love to work for you if ever you're looking. Thank you, goodbye. There's absolutely nothing inappropriate about that. In fact, it can be very flattering. If somebody says like, wow, I see you guys do this work. That must really be exciting. If ever you're looking, I would love to work for you. That's very flattering. You guys are awesome. I'd love to be there, part of it. They don't pester you. They don't say anything inappropriate. And that makes a very good impression. It also elevates you above the crowd. How many other people do you think are doing that? Saying that to that hiring manager? Maybe one or two tops, but usually not many, right? So already you've elevated yourself above all the other people by demonstrating your passion, demonstrating your initiative, demonstrating your communication skills, demonstrating your professionalism. How many people from IT have demonstrated those things? Okay, so if this is interesting to you, step into this world, learn about networking, learn about some of the techniques. Okay, yes, I've got a course, I cover it in that course, the Get Hired course, but there's a lot of free stuff online, and beyond getting people's advice, go out and proactively try things. I built up a consulting business by doing that very process with CEOs of other companies. And I sat down with like over 100 CEOs one-on-one. And that resulted in me getting a lot of consulting clients when I first started this up. I mean, it does work. You don't have to talk necessarily to CEOs, but I mean, you talk to the decision makers. Anyway, so check that out. That's stepping into the world of networking. It can open doors for you. It can open so many doors for you throughout your entire career if you learn some of those skills. Where did I leave off here? But best of luck, Lord Ramen Noodles. Oscar says, hi, Bill. Thank you for your help. Your channel is always on my screen and I'm on interviews. Well, good. You're absolutely welcome. And I'm glad it's helpful. Thanks for saying so. Garrett says, hi, got a job out of school doing data analysis for a small fintech company. This keeps moving on me. Where was I here? This keeps jumping around. It's very hard to have a degree in business systems, but I like finance. How can I use this experience to get into finance without going back to college? Listen, I don't have the details for that, but here's how you find out. Get on LinkedIn, do a variation of what I just described a minute ago, okay? Like contact people in, say, you want to get into finance, do a people search for the people who are in the roles that you want, okay? And look at their profile. Like, what do they have? What's their background? If they all have a master's degree in finance, that highly suggests that that's what you would need too, okay? Now, if most of them don't have a master's degree in finance, but they're in those roles anyway, then that suggests that you don't need a master's degree in finance. You know what I'm saying? So look at a lot of their profiles. So hopefully you know how to use LinkedIn. Get on there, do a people search in your geographic location. So your city, if you're in a city, and then within your industry, okay, let's say it's like, I don't know, division controller. Okay. Like, someone that works in, or treasurer, if you're in finance, in like a private company. Okay. Go and do a search for treasurer, and then do a people search. You'll see all these people pop up that are in your city that are in that role. And then look at what company they're in right now. And then start looking at their profiles. Okay. Now, beyond that, if you want to go a step further, go and do the same thing, but look up people that are one level up from those people. They're the boss of the people in the role that you want to have. Okay. So they're in the finance industry and they're the boss of whatever role you want. So if you want to be a controller, who's the boss of the controller? Like the chief financial officer? Go look at the chief financial officers, okay? In your city, limit it to a specific industry if that's what you're, wanting to do. And then reach out to those people and say like, something to like ask for an informational interview. Okay. I've done videos on how to do that. There's other people that will tell you how to do that, where you reach out, you send this person a message like, Mr. or Madam CFO, and you say, hello, I think, your company's great. And, I'd love to get your expert opinion on, this industry and where it's going. Would you possibly be able to spare me 30 minutes of your valuable time? Let me know if so, let me know like a date, time, place. We could maybe grab a coffee, let me know a date, time, place of your convenience where we could grab a coffee and I'll be there. Now, like anything else, a lot of people, they won't respond, but some people will. So if you send that out to say 100 CFOs in your city, you might get 10 or 5 or something that will say, sure, yeah, come on down. So now you're sitting down with 5 CFOs who have hired people that are in the roles that you would like. And you can say, like, when, in this particular role, what do you think is more important? That someone has this qualification or someone has this experience? What, those roles, what are the challenges going forward? How is that role going to change in the near future, in your opinion? What would be the best ways of preparing somebody to be in that role, in your opinion? And is that going to change? And has that changed in the last few years? And getting answers to these questions will inform you what you need to do if you want to be in that role. Okay. In addition, it does have an intrinsic value in doing this, because now you're on speaking basis with all these CFOs. When you leave the meeting, you say, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. If I had any follow-up questions, would it be okay if I gave you a call? Would that be okay? Most people will say, sure, not a problem. They give you their card. Now, in the future, you've got a personal contact there, that this is a person who hires people in the role that you want. So that could be very valuable. If you just keep doing this, you'll build up a huge Rolodex, as it were, of these people. And sometimes, in statistical probability, at some point, they will be looking for a replacement for that role. So in the meantime, if you build up the qualifications for it, there you go. That's your path in. So I don't know the details of that, but this is how you get that information straight from the source, from the people who hire those people, and what they in particular care about and look for, and what their opinions are and their values are. Okay? That's how you get that information. Oh, this thing moved on me again. Where did I leave off? So that was Garrett. So hopefully that makes sense, Garrett. Oscar, this week I am starting a process selection for a position, 50% legal and 50% compliance, for a French pharmaceutical company with a branch here in Mexico. Currently, I'm working for a German one. Okay, like a German what? It's a French pharmaceutical company in Mexico. I don't understand the German thing. I have always enjoyed the selection process, and your videos have helped me a lot, specifically in getting to know how recruiters think and how to respond to some hard questions. Well, good. I mean, like, look, the stuff I say is basically a generalization. I mean, you get all kinds of individuals that have their quirky opinions and methods and all this kind of stuff. But generally, that's, there's some general things you can conclude at what recruiters care about and what they want to hear, as opposed to what hiring managers care about and what they want to hear. Yeah, that's how it goes. There are 21 of you guys here. We are past the 1 hour mark, so I'm going to start ramping this down. But if anyone has any last minute questions that you haven't had a chance to ask yet, get in the chat, let me know, and I will get to those before we wrap this up. I have multiple camera angles that I never use, so I keep forgetting to do it. It's not automatic. I'm just sort of doing this in a very homespun kind of way. Yeah. So in case you missed it, I will be doing a second episode of my leadership live stream, which I did last week. Like, it was a one-time only thing, one-off as an experiment. And based on the reactions I got from that, I'm going to do another one. It warrants at least another episode. So I will be doing that next week. And that's where it was kind of an experiment where we talk about if you want to be an upper level manager or an executive, some of the particular issues that you deal with at that level, some strategy, business strategy, how it works, how you manage people, how you manage business units, things like that. I enjoy talking about that stuff in general. I don't really have a public forum for that. Usually people don't do that kind of in public because it's very specific and, you kind of, there's a lot of stuff. If you're employed by a company, there's a lot of things that you just can't say. You just can't say. It just sounds bad. And so you don't really see that a lot. And, but I mean, I have absolutely no ties. I left my corporate career behind. That's why I say I'm a former CEO, because I was a CEO and I'm never going back to being a CEO. So I've got no, vested interests in protecting anyone or anything. I'm going to keep it real. So if you have ambitions for that kind of stuff, it's a bit of an experiment. Tune in next week to a live stream on this channel called Leadership. That's just what I called it. And we'll talk about that stuff. Okay. MS is talking. MS, I don't have a previous message from MS, but it sounds like I'm coming into a discussion that's already been started. MS says, I was unable to negotiate based on this. Okay. She said, if I countered, I may not get the job, as there are others behind me that could get it. Okay. It seems like I missed the beginning of that story. If you want to, if I don't know if that got filtered out or if you want to just repost the beginning of it. Berwickton Tweed. It's my buddy Berwickton Tweed says, a few weeks ago, I turned down an in-person job interview after getting past the HR phone screen. I recently reapplied to that role. Okay. Do you think the HR representative will respond after turning down the interview? Should I follow up after a week? Unfortunately, Berwickton Tweed, usually they do. Like, usually, like if they've eliminated you once and then you reapply, usually good things don't happen, but there are always exceptions to that. If it's a really good job and you really feel that they need to take a better look at you or something, I mean, I wouldn't, no harm in doing it, but just keep your expectations low, because usually if they've eliminated you once, that's their opinion of you. And, they won't reassess unless there's like a real compelling reason to do so. You can follow up after a week. There's no harm in it. But once again, I say keep your expectations low. No harm in trying. If it's something that's really good, that's worth going for, sure. Once again, you guys know my biases here a little bit. My biases are based on experiences. I wouldn't go to the recruiter. I mean, I would go to a hiring manager. If the recruiter maybe you feel didn't assess you correctly or rejected you out of hand, and you feel you're a very compelling fit for this, maybe I would consider going to the hiring manager, reaching out to them. And remember, not just for this role, but maybe this recruiter has already sort of made their decision on this role. Maybe another role that could come along very soon that's similar. You know what I'm saying? If it's a big company, they could be hiring almost constantly for certain roles. So if you reach out to the hiring manager, you make a good impression. Maybe this one you lost on this round, but there'll be another round very soon, like in a month, and you could get in on that one. So, I would considering reaching out not just to the recruiter who's already rejected you, but also to the hiring manager. Renee says, thanks for your help. You're absolutely welcome, Renee. And thank you for saying so. Berwickton Tweed. Also, how do I explain that my previous job role did not work out? Also, I professionally... Why would you want to explain that? Hello, I'm applying for this job. Now, just so you know, my previous role did not work out. I know I'm saying it in a childish way, but do you think that gives a good impression? I would try not to have to explain that. Also, I professionally turned down the interview at the time and I didn't ghost them. Okay? I don't know what you mean by that exactly. Like they said, come in for an interview and you said no. Yeah, that, like, okay, in this world, that's usually not, like, good things usually don't follow after doing that, okay? There's always exceptions, but, you know, usually that doesn't make a great first impression. Because you're signaling that you're not interested. And then you're turning around and saying, oh, wait, maybe I am. You know? So, MS says 3 messages up. Yeah, I don't see it, MS. I've scrolled about 30 messages up, and I don't see anything. So if you could please repost that, if there was, then I can see it. Is it on the screen here? 3 messages up. No, it's not on the screen either. So, sorry, I don't know what's going on there, but I will be happy to respond to you if you could get the first part, because it really does seem like I missed a huge chunk of the story. Mine says, thanks for the details you pointed out in answering Renee's questions. I have a similar challenge. However, I have not been tailoring my resume to most jobs I have applied for. Okay. Now, Renee, which one was Renee's questions? Which Renee was, that's going back a bit. Oh yeah, that was the professional resume, applying for 30 jobs a day, but not tailoring it. Yeah, MS, there is some filtering. YouTube does some filtering. I've had to turn on their default filters because in the past I've got people spamming and saying a whole bunch of insulting things, like over and over and over again, like just corrupting all the chat stream. So I've had to turn that on. So it sometimes filters stuff out. I don't know exactly the rhyme and reason, but it does do that. So just make sure that whatever you post shows up. Like in this black screen here where it's scrolling, that's basically what I'm seeing. Okay, so if it doesn't show up there, then it's being filtered out before it gets to me. But just to respond while we're waiting, just to respond to MS, like what you did say, you know, the last thing she said, if I countered, I may not get the job as there are others behind me that get. Yeah, you know, this is the kind of crap that like is the reason why I beat up on recruiters sometimes, because they use these really heavy-handed, and it's a delightful combination of like being totally heavy-handed with, you know, being very basic and stupid at the same time. You know, it's like, of course, you're in competition with somebody else, and they're going to play one candidate off the other. If somebody will do it for the minimum, then, you know, it's kind of hard for you to really demand something above the minimum compensation, you know, unless you can really show that there's a massive benefit in hiring you over them, even though you both meet the requirements. You know what I'm saying? You know, you're like 20 times more likable or easygoing, or, you know, or you know what I mean? Like there's some real obvious advantage. And telling you this kind of stuff is just like, talk about not being a good people person, you know? Like, it's just like, how do you feel when you get told this kind of stuff? You feel like, oh, you guys don't like me. You're a bunch of jerks. You know, you're actively trying to work against me. Does that give you a good feeling? Does that sound like a place you would want to work? Of course not. It's like, that's why it always impresses me how you can hire people whose sole job is to deal with people, but they are so bad at it. But yet that's the thing that they do for their 9-to-5 career, and I'm talking about recruiters here. A lot of them are just like, you are doing a terrible job at driving away talent from this organization just by the things you choose to say to potential candidates. You don't have to say those things. You can still do your job and not say these things in such a rude and, with tremendous cutting rudeness. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so MS says, just saying, soft offer received and couldn't counter, and the HR recruiter said she negotiated for me. Thoughts? Well, if someone said that to me, I would tell them to F off, to be 100% obvious to you. You don't need to negotiate for me. What arrogance, what stupidity. They're going to tell you that, like, oh, you have no rights and you have no choice. And this is how we do things. So you have no choice but to go along with it. There are a lot of people in this world that will love to tell you that. Number one, 95% of the time, they're wrong. None of that is true. Another 95% of the time, they know it's not true. They're trying to manipulate you. And number three, it's symptomatic of like a very small person. You know what I mean? You can do whatever the hell you want to do. You don't have to dance to their every whim. If they have an offer to make, they can offer you whatever they want to offer you. That's their right. You have the right to walk away from anything that they offer you. You have free will. You don't have to bow to their wishes. The other thing is that they are not concerned whatsoever with what's in your personal interest. They're looking out entirely for their self-interests, right? It's like an auction. The seller wants to drive the price up as much as they possibly can. The buyer wants to drive the price down as much as they possibly can. They have competing interests. And usually where it lies is some kind of equilibrium that sort of works out for both parties. It's a compromise for both parties, right? But like having somebody tell you, I'm sorry, this is how we do things. We offer you this price, this compensation, and you accept it. And you feel privileged to work here, that we even gave you an interview. That's the process. And you can turn around and tell them to piss off because you play by your own rules, And if you're in demand, you don't have to take that kind of treatment. You can go somewhere else where they actually treat you like a human being and they offer you more money and you accept it there. There's a lot of companies that they pay below market. That means the average compensation for a certain job is here and they intentionally pay here. Okay. They do that because they can save a bit of money. They accept the fact that they get the dregs of the barrel when it comes to the talent. They accept the fact that they have high employee turnover in those roles. A lot of times, they have high employee turnover because it's a rough job. It's not a very desirable job. And once you find this out, you will probably want to leave, right? So, there's all kinds of things going on there. But just the fact that somebody's dealing with you like that, that's like one strike against them. There you go. That's my rant for today. A lot of people, I do a live stream on side hustles, like how to stick your toe into the world of entrepreneurship and see if it's for you. Because people get tired of being treated like this in a lot of organizations. I can't tell you how many times I've dealt with like large organizations, and government and education is, in my experience, in my personal experience, has been the worst. These people that will tell you this is how we do stuff. So we give you this and you accept it. And I can't tell you how many times in my life I've turned around and said, no, goodbye. And then they go, oh, what? What do you mean? You're not just doing what we say? We don't know how to handle that situation. And then they come back and they say, okay, you can have what you're asking for. I can't tell you how many times I've had to do that. These people that are so used to getting their way, because they're in a position of authority. And recruiters, I think, fit into that too, because they're so used to people kissing their butt, basically. They constantly deal with applicants that, are on their best behavior. They're, so charming and so nice because they want your favor, right? So you can treat them like crap, but they'll still be polite and nice to you all the time. And I think a lot of people in that position, they abuse that position. So they end up being very rude and very gruff with people, way more than you would in any other kind of social interaction or professional interaction. And people just take it. People don't call them on it. So my gut instinct would be like this is, I'm just going off on a tangent, but my gut instinct would be like, the fact that you're treating me like that makes me like want to push back against it. I wouldn't get in their face and insult them and all that. I would just not comply. They say, this is what you have to do. It's like, okay, I'll get back to you. And then you never respond to them again. And you go somewhere where they will treat you properly. Because the odds are, in my experience, is that when you're young, you try and muscle through this. You go, well, I sort of have to play this game if I want to get a job there. The problem is you get a job there and you realize that most people at that organization are like this recruiter. They're jerks that mistreat you and exploit you. And so it wasn't really to your advantage to work there in the first place. Instead, what might have been the better idea would be to say no and then go to a place where when they respond to you, they're actually friendly and they respect you and they treat you properly. They understand protocol, they understand manners. You don't have to negotiate for me. Don't tell me I have to accept something when I don't want to accept it. I don't have to bow to your will or anyone else's. I do what's right for me. And you guys do what's right for you. And that's how this works. Let's be honest. Okay. So now that I went on that big rambling trip to nowhere, where am I here? Okay, so MS was saying soft offer received, couldn't counter. I mean, you can counter anything. You can counter anything you want. Mine says, thank you for this insightful. Going forward, I will apply all these techniques. Good. Hopefully that is somewhat helpful. Thank you to everybody that's here. There's 24 of you guys here. You guys are all awesome. I wish you nothing but success. Learn some of the skills. Like this is, like I keep saying, when we're at this point in our lives, we're between jobs, we're uncertain about what the future holds. It can be a very nerve-wracking experience. Our self-esteem and our self-confidence are like at their lowest they've ever been right at this moment. It's temporary, okay? Things do turn around. You feel a lot better about yourself and about life and about things in general. It takes a bit of time. Until then, I know this is a kind of, an unpleasant process for most people, but try to look at it as an opportunity to learn new skills, to step outside of yourself and, pick up new skills, learn about how things work, become more aware of, the reality of the situation and what your options are and what you can do, what's within your power to do. And that will last you the rest of your career and the rest of your life. And you'll come out on top for it. Sometimes we need that kick that pushes us into doing something that's hard or a little bit unpleasant, but it's something we really should do. It's to our advantage to do. So maybe this is the opportunity for you to do that. Learn all you can. Don't just listen to me. Listen to a lot of different sources, and keep working hard and you will come out on top. Those are my final thoughts. But I see there's a couple more notes. I'll just read this really quickly. MS, that was awesome. Thank you. Oh, my sort of hateful rant was awesome. Okay, good. That's good to know. I don't know if you should necessarily encourage me to do that. I'll do it all the time and I'll probably go too far. Chandler says, I've been actively applying since May. It's been a very frustrating process, but I've heard the fall time is where things are ramped up. For some industries, yes. Yes, it is. For some things, not all. Others, they behave in the opposite way, but things are always sort of coming up and going down, right? And you can use that to your advantage. Samir says, I want to thank you so much for your content. Your content is so simple and effective. Okay, as long as it's effective. I don't know if it's necessarily, if you see what I'm saying. I don't know if it's necessarily a good thing that it's simple, but it's as long as it's effective. So thank you. I will see you guys next week at the same time for another episode of How to Get Hired. Take care of yourselves and best of luck.